The Tragic Journey of Sarah Baartman, From Hottentot Venus to Reclamation. Introduction, a name stolen by history. In the heart of South Africa, during the late 18th century, a woman was born who would become one of the most tragic symbols of racial exploitation in history. Her name was Sarah Baartman, but to the world, she would be known as the Hottentot Venus. Her life would become a disturbing intersection of colonialism, objectification, and scientific racism, where her body became a commodity, displayed for the amusement of European men. But her story, though tragic, is also a powerful tale of resilience, identity, and the fight for dignity. The promise of escape, a dream of a better life. Sarah Baartman was born in 1789 in the Gamtoos Valley of South Africa. She belonged to the Khoikhoi people, an indigenous group whose physical characteristics, curvaceous hips, large buttocks, and darker skin, were seen as unusual and exotic by the European settlers. In her early years, she led a simple life, working the land with her people, grounded in tradition and culture. She was married to a man named Goliath, and together they had a daughter. Life, though difficult under colonial oppression, had a sense of peace, of belonging. But Sarah had dreams beyond the confines of her village. She was young, vibrant, and the beauty of her body began to draw attention that would ultimately change the course of her life forever. In 1810, a man named Hendrik Sizes approached her with an offer that seemed too good to refuse: travel to London, where she could earn money by showcasing her physical appearance in exhibitions. She could send money back to her family and lead a life of greater comfort. But this promise was nothing but a trap, woven in deception and greed. Sarah, naive and hopeful, agreed. She left behind her family and her country, believing that her future would be brighter. Instead, she was sold, her body turned into a spectacle, commodified and stripped of its identity. The cage of London, an object for the public gaze. Upon arriving in London, Sarah was immediately thrust into the world of exhibitions, where her body became the main attraction. She was put on display in a cage, treated like an animal, gawked at by curious onlookers who paid to view her exotic features. Her body, once a symbol of strength and fertility in her culture, was now reduced to nothing more than an object of fascination for white Europeans. They call me Venus, Sarah thought, but I am no goddess. I am a woman. A mother. A daughter. But to them, I am just a thing to be admired, to be laughed at. The name Hottentot Venus became synonymous with otherness and dehumanization. Audiences did not see Sarah as a person, they saw only her body. Her large buttocks, her full figure, which were once seen as markers of beauty in her community, became a source of mockery in European eyes. She was paraded around like a circus act, her body measured, examined, and commented on by men who felt entitled to her existence. The dark side of fame, Parisian experiments and the Museum of Human Oddities. Sarah's exploitation did not end with London. Her captors took her to Paris, where her body became the subject of scientific scrutiny. Leading French naturalist Georges Cuvier studied her body, claiming her physical features were evidence of African inferiority. Cuvier, along with other scientists, saw Sarah not as a person but as a specimen, a proof of the theory of racial hierarchy. She was displayed in the Royal Museum of Man, and her body was dissected, preserved, and displayed for public viewing. The Hottentot Venus was no longer a woman, she was a living exhibit. Her physicality was dissected for the sake of proving the European belief in the superiority of their own race. Her identity was stripped away, and her name was forgotten in the clamor of white male dominance and scientific racism. Do they see me? Sarah thought, her mind spinning with confusion. Or do they see only what they want to see? A woman who is a thing. A specimen. The philosophical struggle, who am I? In the confines of her cage and the dissection rooms of Paris, Sarah's greatest battle was not only against the physical exploitation but also against the loss of her identity. Every day, she was asked to perform, to bend and twist her body for the pleasure of onlookers, all while hearing the whispers of her worth being reduced to the shape of her body. Sarchi's story brings forth a key philosophical question: what is the true value of a person? In a world that reduces women, particularly women of color, to objects of desire or curiosity, how does one maintain their sense of self? The colonial gaze, through both scientific and cultural lenses, saw Sarchi as an other, something outside the boundaries of humanity. In reality, however, Sarchi was still human. She still had thoughts, dreams, fears, and a soul that could not be measured or dissected. The final years. Death, degradation, and the return of her body. Sarchi's life in Paris grew darker as she fell ill, worn down by years of physical abuse, mental anguish, and isolation. She died in 1815 at the age of 26, a young woman whose life had been stolen by the very people who called themselves civilized. Her body, still deemed valuable, was dissected after her death, and her remains were put on display in a French museum for over 150 years. Her death was not the end of Sarchi's story, but the beginning of her legacy. In 2002, after years of international outcry, Sarah Baartman's remains were repatriated to South Africa, where she was finally given the burial she deserved. Her body was returned to her homeland and laid to rest with the dignity and respect that had been denied to her in life. Reclaiming identity. Sarchi's story is a reminder of the injustices women of color have faced. But it is also a story of resilience. Despite the objectification and dehumanization she suffered, Sarchi's identity has lived on, reclaimed by her people and by the world that now remembers her as a victim of colonialism rather than an object of curiosity. In her death, Sarchi became a symbol of the struggle for identity and dignity. Her story continues to resonate in the fight against the exploitation of women, against racial stereotypes, and against the erasure of people's true selves for the sake of others' gain. The power of reclamation. Sarah Baartman's story is not just about a woman who was abused and exploited by colonial forces. It is also a story about the power of reclamation. Through her repatriation, through the acknowledgement of her suffering, Sarchi's identity has been restored. She is no longer the Hottentot Venus, a term that sought to define her solely by her physicality. She is Sarah Baartman, a woman who deserves respect, remembrance, and justice. Her life forces us to confront the brutal legacy of colonialism and the objectification of the body. It challenges us to reflect on the nature of identity and how it is shaped by both external forces and internal self-perception. Sarchi's story teaches us that freedom is not simply escaping physical chains, but reclaiming one's humanity and dignity in a world that seeks to deny